Being here. I'm Avram Weiss. I'm the chair of the Tikkun Olam Committee at CBH, Congregation Beth Havarim. Let me just go over a few logistical details for tonight. We're going to meet from 7 to 8:30, and our speaker, Donna Golan, will be available to stay for a little while afterwards, but she is leaving at 8:45 promptly to catch a plane. So please don't make it hard for her to leave at 8:45. Bathrooms are down the hall to the left. We are videotaping tonight to post on the CBH website. I want to make you aware of that. We will in a moment pass around a sign-up sheet if you're interested in either information about breaking the silence and or further programming from CBH about Israeli-Palestinian issues. Please sign the mailing list, and in the far right-hand column you will see a scribbled in my terrible handwriting note that says book group. So one of the things we thought about that might be kind of cool, which is also a way to get you to buy the book, is that we thought we'd see if there's an interest in an ongoing book group, which would be a great way for people who are interested in talking about these issues to meet and continue dialogue on the subject. Yeah, it seemed like a good idea. It wasn't my idea, it was somebody else in the community. So I hope you'll be interested in that, and just put a check mark next to your name on the book group column. Okay? Come on in. And I think the last thing I want to say is that if you don't have your copy already of Our Harsh Logic, Donna has brought copies with her, and they are some significant discount from what you can get them online. I would encourage you to buy and read the book. It's a difficult read. I wouldn't recommend it as bedtime reading, but it's an important read. So I want to introduce Elise Cohen, who will introduce our speaker.
Hi everyone. So it's great to see a room filled to hear Donna speak. I had the privilege of hearing her yesterday. She spoke at Emory, and last night for folks at the Carter Center. I want to give a little bit of information about the organization she's with. Breaking the Silence is an organization of veteran Israelis or combatants who served in the Israeli military since the start of the Second Intifada and who served in the occupied territories. And they've taken upon themselves to expose the reality of everyday life. She'll speak about the book, but she also gives a lot of personal testimony, which I think is very powerful. And a little bit more information about her. She was the executive director of Breaking the Silence for a few years, and she started off in her military service from 2001 to 2004. The first year of that, 2001 to 2002, she was in Hebron, and for any of you who've been to Hebron, and for those of you that haven't been to Hebron, I think she'll give some details about what it means, and certainly in the book you hear a lot of this. From 2002 to 2004, she took an officer's course, and she stayed in the military another 3 years and was in one of the biggest military prisons. It wasn't until she became a student journalist and took a trip or a tour with Breaking the Silence campaign, and she actually went to Hebron or back into the territories with the group and started to reflect and look back at her military service, which was a powerful moment of change. And she has her BA in Humanities from the Open University, her MA in Political Communication from Tel Aviv University, and we really are privileged to have her here, and let's all welcome her.
Try to stand the whole time. If not, please forgive me. So hello everyone, and thank you for coming here, and thank you for the opportunity to speak here. It's always very moving to come to different countries and to see that people really care and interested in the conflict, and it's especially important for us, and it's especially moving for us to speak among different Jewish communities and to see people that are coming and interested, and so thank you for that. So my name is Dana. I'm 30 years old. I was born and raised in Israel. At the age of 18, I joined the army, like most Israelis do. As you know, the military service in Israel is mandatory, so women serve for 2 years, men serve for 3 years. You usually cannot choose where you're going. You can have some preference of which kind of job and which kind of unit you would like to do, but that's about that. I was part of the education corps of the Israeli military, and as was told here, after the first training and 7 months in Hebron in the second uprise, during the second uprise I was going to officer course and became an officer, and I left the military in 2004, and did the studies that Elise was mentioning here. And I was the director of Breaking the Silence for the last 4.5 years. And this is my year off of occupation. This is how it looks like. Breaking the Silence, as mentioned, is an organization of veterans. In 2004, there was a group of 60 men who served in the city of Hebron. I don't know how many of you know anything about Hebron, but the city is a very special one. The situation there is very unique, as it's the only Palestinian city where the Israeli settlements are inside the city itself. So the friction between Palestinians and Israelis are really on a regular basis. And this group of soldiers, of 60 men, decided that they need to do something with their experiences. That they realized that there is a huge gap between what we have, as soldiers have seen and done and took part in, and what people at home are actually talking about. What does it actually mean to be a soldier in the territories? And maybe I will, to the ones who do not know the map so well. So we're mostly talking about the West Bank and Gaza today, and Hebron is 1 hour south from Jerusalem. And those territories, of course, were occupied in 1967 as part of the 6 Days War, as well as the Golan Heights there, but we don't, in Breaking the Silence, we do not deal with that territory. And of course, the Sinai desert that is already was returned to Egypt. So our book and our work is actually dealt with the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. So 2004, 60 men are releasing from the army after they've been discussing with each other during their military service about different moral dilemmas and what does it actually mean to control other people at the age of 18 and 19 and 20. And they decided they want to do something in order to make people speak about Hebron and to bring Hebron to Tel Aviv or Jerusalem or Haifa. And what they did is they decided to create an exhibit. They took photos from their own albums and they created an exhibit that called Breaking the Silence. They also interview each other in a very non-professional way, just asking regular routine stories. How does a shift in a checkpoint look like? How does a weapon search look like? What does it mean to enter Palestinian house for mapping? What is a straw widow? What is demonstration of present? Things that I will clarify a bit more later. But they were doing something very, very basic. They thought that the minute they would do that, something would actually change and the Israeli society could not be silent anymore. So they opened the exhibit that was first presented in Tel Aviv, and then in Haifa, and then even in the Israeli parliament in 2004, which is something that it's kind of difficult to think of at this point. And what they did, they actually took, most of the exhibit was pictures. So they took pictures that they took as soldiers during their military service. Nothing was planned to be later an exhibit. And therefore, many of those pictures are really pictures when soldiers are taking themselves. Think of you at the age of 20 or 19 or 18 spending in a place 1 year of your life. You would like to take pictures. So first you take pictures of yourself and the surrounding, and then you start taking pictures also of the routine of what you're doing there. And there comes the Palestinian. This is a picture from Hebron of a regular check that you do to Palestinian going back and forth. This is a picture from a checkpoint next to Nablus. It was later added to the exhibit. I think the picture speaks for themselves. Another player in this in the field are, of course, the settlers. In Hebron, a city of over 100,000 of Palestinians, you have 800 settlers living in the city center, which require a lot of security around that, which I will not get into it now. I will recommend to go into our website and to actually see a short documentary that we call Guided Tour in Hebron, to Breaking the Silence website that actually explains the situation in Hebron. But as I mentioned, 800 of Israeli settlers in the middle of a city of 100 or thousands of Palestinians, and this is where Breaking the Silence were actually established. More of the pictures we have of graffitis. For the ones who cannot read Hebrew, it says Nekama, revenge. It's at the door of a Palestinian store in Hebron. This is another graffiti that was in Hebron by the settlers. I think this is not. They deleted that, by the way. At some point, they realized that people are taking pictures. So now you cannot see these kind of graffitis on the main road, only if you walk on the side of the alleys sometimes. Yeah, some of the pictures are in the book, and many of them are in the exhibit that we are traveling with. This is what you do when you are arresting people at night. What's interesting to see in the pictures is that you have Palestinians around you all the time as a soldier in the territories, and sometimes they're sitting there handcuffed and blindfolded, even when you are sitting on a cigarette break in your base, and it's just part of your reality. This is just part of what you're taking. As part of these pictures, this picture I like because it presented also a bit of how what you do when you are bored. Think about yourself in an 8-hour shift that you are in a checkpoint, or 8-hour shift on a rooftop of a Palestinian house, and you're with your weapon, and it helps you look around. And one of the things that you see is also just a teenager, a Palestinian teenager that feed his birds. And this person was taking photos. That we have many photos through the target, so you see also some people that are just pointing the weapon towards their friends, even just because it becomes some kind of a game. The weapon. This is what you do at the age of 18. And this is a picture from Hebron as well. I don't think that there is so much to say about it, except for the fact that the soldiers and Israeli soldiers and the kids is Palestinian kids, and they do what kids are doing, and they are playing and they're imitating what they see around them all the time. And basically, the goal of Breaking the Silence, since we had the first exhibit in 2004, and until today, is to reveal these kind of realities and to create some kind of a moral discourse about what does it actually mean to control other people. Because many things that I will tell you tonight and many things that you can read in the book can actually be justified by security. And the security issue in Israel is very, very strong, and the security, when you talk about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in general, the word security is one thing that will be repeated again and again and again. But we're trying to put another question on the table and to ask whether it's moral to control other people, and whether it's moral to control other people for 46 years now. And we see ourselves as the best channel for information of this kind of realities, because even though the Israeli society considered to be very, very militant, only less than 10% of the people that serve in the army actually get to serve in the territories. And the occupation does not present, it's not present in the Israeli discourse. And no one wants to look at the mirror and to see that it does not look so nice. So we took it upon ourselves. Yes?
What was the percentage?
Less than 10% of the people. The military is the biggest organization in Israel, obviously. And it's doing many, many things. And it's also sending soldiers to the different borders, and it also sends soldiers to the territories. But it's less than the 10%, and it goes down in the last years as well. So we took it upon ourselves in 2004 already to be this mirror in front of our own society, and to show people how we look like, and how does it really, what's actually been done on behalf of their name, in the name of all of us actually, in the backyard of the Israeli society. And this is the backyard. I arrived to Hebron when I was 18 and a half, after I was trained to be part of the Education Corps in Israel. Education Corps trained hundreds and hundreds of people. That was the main goal is to talk about human rights and the ethical code of the Israeli military, and to make people more connected to the Jewish tradition. And the thought behind that is that if you make an 18-year-old kid with a weapon feel that he's part of something stronger and bigger, he will be a better soldier eventually. There's a chair here also.
Right up front.
Oh, you can sit there. It doesn't get better when you sit there. So I was sent by the education.
Hold on.
You can sit there, just stand. You can sit there if you want to go back again.
So I'm sorry I'm late, everybody. I was going to try and come in very quietly. It didn't
Great
work.
job.
Doesn't work. So I arrived at Hebron at the age of 18 and a half. I had no idea what the occupation is. I did not know the word occupation at all. In the map that I've shown you today with the West Bank and Gaza and the Golan Heights is not what we have in the education books in Israel. In the education books in Israel, it's all in one color and it's all Israel. So I had no idea. I knew that in the territories we also have Arabs. I did not even use the word Palestinians, but I did not really know what it means. Back then I already had a family, members of family who lived in settlements. And I knew that they live in this dangerous place that at some point will not be Israel anymore. But that was the understanding that I've got. And I never met Palestinians in my life for 18 and a half years. And then I arrived to Hebron with a very clear picture of what's good and what's bad. There's obviously the Israelis that are good ones and the Palestinians that are the bad ones. Just to remind you, 2001 was a time that it was very, very difficult to be in Israel. Many terror attacks, buses exploding in Tel Aviv, next to where I grew up. The first funeral I went to in my life was at the age of 12, of 3 girls at the age of 13 that crossed the street in Tel Aviv. And they died as a result of a bomb exploding by a Palestinian terrorist. So this was my reality. And I got to Hebron and I felt quite cool to go to this place that you only see it in the news. And then my world was shaking. And it was shaking very, very fast because first I could not do my job.
Are you religious?
No. A big part of my family is religious, especially the settler ones, until this day, but no, I was never religious. But I had lots of respect, and this is what you knew about Hebron. That Hebron is like Jerusalem, not as holy as Jerusalem, but this is, when I arrived to Hebron, I felt that this is where I'm going to be. And then a few things happened that shaped my world. First, I've seen for the first time in my life Israelis that were very violent, not only toward Palestinians, but also toward the soldiers themselves. A few days after I arrived to Hebron, the border was...
settlers?
In the settlement, yeah. The settlement in Hebron is really, try to imagine like 4 neighborhoods. One neighborhood can be like just few buildings. So it's very small place. And you are patrol around it and you're there all the time. And my base was just 5 minutes drive from there, so I was spending the time there quite a lot. And one of the first things that I've seen as a soldier in Hebron is the jeep of my soldier get back to the base when it's full of eggs that were thrown at him. And I was thinking, oh my God, that's great. So the Palestinians are not throwing stones at us, so I can be more relaxed and I can relax my mom. They're just throwing eggs. And then I heard that the people that were throwing eggs at the soldiers were not the Palestinians, but the settlers themselves.
Wow.
And just, I will get back to that when I talk about the book. But that was the first thing that was the first act of violence that I've seen, and it was not the last one. And then I started to spend time, and I tried to do my job, but no one can really talk about education and ethical codes when you actually are sent to control civilians, and when you have to stand in checkpoints for 8 hours shift or 16-hour shift, and between those shifts you have only 8 hours of a break. where you have to go back to the base and take a shower and call your friends or parents and sleep a bit, and then get back to the field for another 8 hours or 16-hour shift of checkpoint or patrols. And the soldiers of border patrol in Hebron are doing that for almost 2.5 years of their lives, except for the basic training at the beginning. And they get the order to see all the Palestinians as a threat and to suspect everyone. And when you do that, so it's a bit more difficult to talk about human rights when you send people at that age and you give them the weapon and the power to control other people. So I could not do my job. And it's very difficult to explain to people from the outside maybe, but at the age of 18, when I was walking in Hebron, even without a weapon, I knew that my life was worth more than the life of the Palestinians that are there.
I'm sorry. What is the primary purpose of the military presence in Hebron?
Depends who you ask. Depends who you ask. In general, and I will get it when I talk about, I'll present the book in a minute, the purpose of the army is to defend Israel and the Israeli settlers, because they are Israeli citizens. So where you have settlers, you also have army, in general in the West Bank, not just in Hebron. And more and more when I could not do my job, and more I was patrolling with people, and I was sitting with them in checkpoint, and I entered a Palestinian house in a weapon search. That was the first time in my life I was actually inside of a Palestinian house. I got to know more and more what does it actually mean to control other people. And maybe just to give the example of the weapon search, try to imagine yourself in the middle of the night with a group of soldiers. I was not trained to do weapon search at all, but I was very bored. And I wanted to join the guys and to do what they're doing as well, because they always went out to those cool operations. And at the age of 18, it is cool. And when you're surrounded with people around you that this is what they're doing, and for 18 years of your life, you're waiting to join the army, and you're waiting for contributing to your own community by defending Israel, this is the coolest thing that you can do. So weapon search in the middle of the night, when you enter someone's house, everything happened very, very quick. People are doing, the soldiers are doing what they were told to do, and it's to take everything out of the drawers and the shelves and the cupboards, and to put everything aside that they can actually search for weapon. The Palestinian family is doing what they were supposed to do, and it's standing in the corner of the room with no resistance, with not saying any word. And the man of the family is doing what he was told, and it's to go with the commander, from the higher rank commander in the situation, and to actually answer questions. And as part of this routine, I was so naive at the age of 18 that I was really thinking that we will help people to put the things back in place. Because I could not understand how we can go and create such a big mess and go out. But it, of course, was just naivety of being 18, because we had no time to go back and put things in place. We had another house and another house later that we had to go to. And I actually asked the commander at that point, why are we doing it like that? And if there is another way to do that. And he was saying to me, what I can understand even now from that perspective, is that there is no other way to do a weapon search. You cannot announce it in advance. You cannot let people know that you're coming. You will not send your soldiers for a weapon search during the day, because the whole neighborhood around can know that there are soldiers there, and then they can hurt them. And you have to do it in the most efficient way. So you have to do it quick, and you have to put yourself out of this place. And it made sense at that point. And I went, and during the weapon search, I was also asked to undress women and to check on their bodies. And I did what I've seen in American films before, because I had no idea what you need to do when you have to search on people's bodies. And I remember that because I remember that the first time I was actually thinking in my life, what would I think if someone would enter my parents' place in the middle of the night and would do that to my parents and to my house and to my books that were no longer on the shelves. And there is something that is common to many people that testify to breaking the silence since 2004 until this day. We interviewed 950, almost 1,000 of people by now. And many of those people are saying that the encounter with the territories and the encounter with the occupation was the first time in their life that they realized that we are not the main victim, or we are not the only victim in this situation. And this was the first crank in the wall. It took me 4 years later to join Breaking the Silence, as Ali said, by mistake, just by joining their tour, and to come back to Hebron as a civilian, and to suddenly remember all of these things that I was pushing away from my own memory. And since that moment until today, even when I'm in a year off, this is what I'm doing. So 950 members of Breaking the Silence. Many people choose just to give their testimonies and to get back to their lives. Most of the people that talk to Breaking the Silence are anonymous. Only 60 or 70 out of them reveal, and you can watch it in our website with video testimonies, reveal their identities. There are other people that during the last years also gave interviews to the media and revealed their identities, but it's still a minority out of the minority of people that actually choose to do that. And to spend time about the book that we are here, because till 2010, the only thing that we did is actually collect testimonies and publish them. We also taken people to Hebron, and I highly recommend for everyone who's here to visit Hebron or to visit the West Bank or to actually go see the reality and to check it in your own eyes, because I think that there is nothing stronger than actually be there and to see these things that we're talking about. And you will notice it very, very quick. It's not, and you don't need a guide for that, but you can use Breaking the Silence as a guide if you do get there. And at some point in 2010, when we reached 10-year anniversary to the second Intifada, we realized that we want to do something more. And we have the ability, after back then interviewing over 700 soldiers, men and female, by the way, we can give an analysis about the reality to say something more than just trying to make people resist the occupation because it's bad, it's morally wrong, and it's not helping us. So we started going over all and read again and again all the testimonies that we had, thousands of testimonies. We chose 101 soldiers. It's, I think, something like 180 testimonies in this book. And for the first time, we gave an analysis about the last 10 years in the territories and about the logic that behind what the army is actually doing there. We don't sit in the room where people make the decisions of why the army is doing that or that. We don't have Secret Service people that talk to us, even though I don't know if probably some of you know The Gatekeepers, the book that the film that it actually presents. Even Secret Service people break their silence in a way, but we do not have it with us. We can only describe the reality and the briefings and the orders that soldiers on the ground gets, and how the occupation and the control on the Palestinians are implemented. So what we did, we took 4 main word codes that we heard again and again and again in testimonies, and that are familiar to most Israelis as well. And we break it down to what it actually means in reality. The first one is prevention, sikul in Hebrew. The second one is separation, afrada. The third one is fabric of life, mirkam chaim. And the fourth chapter deals with law enforcement, achifat chok, which is the only one out of 3 that is not a phrase that most Israelis know and have some kind of a positive connotation with. And what we discovered is that if we started from a starting point that says that everything that the army is doing has to do with the security of Israel and the Israeli settlers or Israeli citizens wherever they are, and it's, when you think about security, you think about things that are mostly defensive acts. What actually the army is doing in the last 10 years is not defensive, it's mostly offensive acts. And it's the main act is not about security, the main act is about preserving some kind of status quo, some kind of control on the Palestinians. And again, without knowing what the big plan around it or what is strategic that says this will lead us to someplace else. Many people are talking about a peace process for 20 years now, and many people are trying to do different negotiation, but the army on the ground act as if it's there to stay. The military control is getting more deeper on the Palestinians' life, and the situation for the Palestinians, even though it's perceived to be getting better and that the economic situation is getting a bit better for Palestinians, or that something is in change toward emerging of a Palestinian state, what we see from the book and what the conclusion of the book, and by that I'm kind of telling you the end, is that nothing is really changing. There is no steps toward any kind of replacement for the Israeli presence in the occupied territories. And not only that, is that the control on the Palestinians is actually preventing anything good to actually, that would actually be able to emerge and to grow into a good option for replacement. So that I will say a few words only about the rest of the chapter, and I will put more efforts on the first chapter of prevention, because it's the main one. But just to explain some kind of development that we've noticed, that prevention is a positive phrase, but when you think of prevention, you usually think of prevention of terror. And prevention of terror is something that we all support. The thing is that when you put all of those testimonies together and our reading of the reality and the orders and the briefing that soldiers are testifying on, you actually see that prevention became everything. Or most of what the army is doing in the territories at this point is considered to be a preventive act. So it can be, for example, if we take arrest, or the procedure of arrest as I describe it, similar to weapons search. You go inside of the middle of the night and you arrest someone that you have intelligence information on. It doesn't matter if it's a big shot in the terror organization, or someone that knows something that is good enough. It's someone that you need to catch him and to prevent him from committing any kind of involvement in terror. So we have testimonies about how you actually arrest people you have intelligence information on. And then we see slowly with the years how it's gotten wider. You arrest not people you have only information on, but also people that are family members of those people you have information on, and also the neighbors of those people that you have information on, in order to create pressure. And you not only arrest those people. In the last year we hear more and more about mass arrest. We have testimonies, for example, one from 2009 from a village called Khares, and in the West Bank, when soldiers, a whole company of soldiers enter a Palestinian village, arrest all the men from the age of 16 to 60, put them all in the school for overnight, all of them blindfolded and handcuffed, while you have soldiers guarding them. You have other soldiers that are going from one place to the other in the village and searching in those houses. That in this specific case, the soldiers that testified there said that the houses in the village was so poor, there was nothing that they found. They could not even loot anything. Nothing. The thing was completely done. Different places that we hear about mass arrests is places that they have taken part, villages that taken part in the popular struggle, in the non-violent protests against the occupation. And what the Israeli military is doing is actually, in order to prevent those kind of protests, they do mass arrest of the men in the village, and they go for search, and they trying to intimidate. A different procedure that we hear about, called mock arrest, we hear about it more and more in the last years, is that when you actually practice arrest, you don't arrest anyone you have information on. On the contrary, you have new soldiers in the area, and you would like them to practice before they arrest a real person. So what you're doing, you take in the information from the intelligence officer or from the secret service. You ask them for a place that you know that there is nothing in there. And you take your soldiers overnight, in the middle of the night, to a Palestinian family. You take the men out, or one of the men out, and you go out with them. And a few hours later, you release them. And some of the people that testify on that says that they knew that in advance, and that this is just a practice. And some of them said that they did not. And actually, when you ask soldier why is that being done, and so they have two reasons that they describe. One is the practice, and the second thing is it's because it's creating some kind of noise. This noise in the village is very important for the army because if an innocent man was arrested, so people around will ask themselves, why was this guy arrested? If the army arrested him and he has no involvement in any terror, they can come tomorrow and arrest me maybe. And this noise is something that we hear about a lot with everything that has to do with prevention. The army calls it demonstrations of presence, making your presence felt. The thought behind making your presence felt is that this will prevent terror. If the Palestinian will know that the army is everywhere, they can never predict where they will come from. And what they will do, they will not even think of taking part in any kind of challenge to the Israeli control, any kind of terror attack.
Why doesn't, I mean, it seems that would backfire. If they're gonna arrest me anyway, why shouldn't I be doing something worthy of arrest?
Let's say that if you live under this kind of reality, it's not just, it's everywhere. Demonstrations of presence can be achieved in many ways. And again, everything I said is from, is here and it's from testimonies of soldiers. One of the ways will be just by violent patrols. The people are doing violent patrols. So one of them will be in the beginning of the decade. You have soldiers testifying of how they went into villages or in different neighborhoods in Hebron in the middle of the night, shooting rooftops, shooting boiler heater, doing fires, doing lots of noise in order to make the Palestinians understand that they are there. Just a few months ago in YouTube was released a Palestinian video of Israeli soldier entering a village in the middle of the night, shouting with the speakers on the jeeps, Sabah al Khair, Sabah al Nur, good morning, good day. Doing that for a few minutes, going out. After a few days, going inside to the same village, doing the same noise, going out. After a few minutes, doing the same thing and going out. After a few days, in several days, they did it a few times. Demonstrations of presence, for example, can be randomly checks of houses. The Palestinians do not know that it's randomly checks of houses. But the soldier testified that among like they have 8 hours of shift. They do patrols. They get the order to enter 5 houses for checks. And then you ask them, so who's checking your house? Who tells you where to check? And some of them said the officer, not very high rank officer, but the officer that comes with them. Some of them says the surgeon. Some of them said that they can do it themselves, decide. You can do random checks of mapping of houses. Mapping is when you enter Palestinian houses and you draw how the house looks from the inside. You write information of all the families, meaning the name, the ID numbers, the telephone numbers, everything that you can write on. And you do that in one house, and you do it in another house. The houses in Hebron were mapped already, who knows how many times. And basically, why are you doing that? Sometimes you actually do that and you give the information to someone, but we have many testimonies of soldiers that says, we did those mapping, but no one take the papers from us later. One member of Break Messianic was even said that he was asked by his commander to take the camera and to take the pictures of Palestinians, to put them over the wall and to take the pictures of them during those mappings. But for 2 months or 3 months, no one came to take the pictures from his camera. No one wanted that pictures from his camera, so we just deleted them. And it's just an intimidation. It's not really about the defensive act, it's just to intimidate them. The army order says to disrupt the day-to-day life of the Palestinian in the neighborhood, for example, to create a feeling of being chased. Army words, not my words. Soldiers that served in Hebron in 2010 used this phrase a lot, to create the feeling of being chased. And so when we talk about prevention, the result of those acts are actually in development of that in the last 10 years, or 13 years even, because we keep hearing the same kind of things in the last years again, is that the military treat the whole Palestinian society as a threat. You train soldiers to think like that. You're doing every act in order to do do that. And basically there is nothing you can do in order to make, a Palestinian cannot do anything in order to remove the image of himself of a threat to the Israelis. And it doesn't matter if you arm or not, because the army demonstrate is present also on leaders of struggle, of the popular struggles, the people that are just doing non-violent protest as well. So prevention is the longest, it's the first and longest chapter of the book. It's the longest, it's the biggest act of the army on these days. And yes.
Earlier you mentioned you get the ID numbers from the residents. Do women and children have ID numbers?
Women, yes, children, no, until a specific age.
Like
But of course,
16?
Israeli has the control of all of the numbers. You cannot die or live or be born in the territories without Israeli know that. Like it goes through Israel in any case. So let's wait, and then I will finish that, and we can have lots of questions. So prevention is the first thing. The second thing we talk about is afrada, separation. Separation is considered to be a positive act usually because it separates the Israelis and the Palestinians. But we actually talk about separation as a tool and also of prevention as well. Because the separation is not just between Israelis and Palestinians, the separation is also between Palestinians and Palestinians. West Bank and Gaza, different villages and different cities. Palestinians from their own lands that they are supposed to work in the field, in agricultural lands. And we discuss in that chapter, and we show how separation is also helping the Israeli to control better the movement of Palestinians and the life of Palestinians in general. The third chapter deals with fabric of life, the civil aspect that is controlled by the Israeli military. There is one unit in the Israeli military that's called civil administration. This is the part of the army, this is the unit that actually controls the civilian aspect of the Palestinian life. What we did is in that chapter for the first time for us, we took testimonies from soldiers who sit in the office, soldiers and officers, that describe and testify on the bureaucracy behind the military control. What goes through checkpoints, who get the permits, or who needs which permit where. I don't know how many of you know, but even the Palestinian President Abbas need a permit from Israel that it gets renewed every 6 months in order to move from one place to the other. And sometimes, like mentioned in different testimonies, usually the Israeli military use the control on the civilian life of Palestinians as a punishment. So there was a time not so long ago that the permit of Abbas was not renewed because there was something that was not, I don't even remember what was the incident, but there was something that Israel did not find so great. So that they did not renew his permit and he could not move in the West Bank from one place to the other. There is a soldier testifying about the fact that when there was a terror attack in 2002 or 2003 in Netanya, there was no money in the banks in Ramallah because Israel did not transfer the money. And when he was asked why, he was talking because we want to dry them out. We want them to understand that they should not, and this is another way of prevention, that they should not think of doing any of the terror attack because then they will not have money. The fabric of life basically describe a regime of permits because this is what it is. And when we dealt with that, we were asking ourselves, because in Israel, the Merkam Chaim, the fabric of life phrase is very positive. It's considered to be very, very positive. The Israeli authorities and leadership use that in order to show that there is some kind of normalcy in life under occupation. And when we were talking about it among ourselves, we were asking ourselves whether we were, just change the word Palestinians and Israeli, where we were, as Israeli citizens, able and willing to live under these kind of conditions. And the answer was obviously not. This is life in the grace of the occupier, and it means that every aspect of life of Palestinian is really under the control of Israel. And the fourth chapter in the book deals with the settlers, because you cannot talk about the occupation without talking about the presence of 500,000 of Israelis almost in the West Bank and in East Jerusalem, if you include that as well. And to the question that someone was asking me here before, there are two law systems in the territories. One is the military law that is implemented by the soldiers, and the Palestinians are subject to the military law, which is changing and has different warrants, and you cannot really predict what will it be. And there is another civil system, law system, which is the Israeli democratic law system, implemented on the Israelis living in the territories. And in charge of them is the police. So if you see violent off-settlers, this is something that happens a lot, violent off-settlers toward Palestinians, you as a soldier cannot do anything. You can call the police. You have no authority to arrest Israelis. You have no authority to do something in that situation, because you know as a soldier exactly what to do when the person who attacked is the Palestinian, but you don't know what to do, and you have no tools to act when the Palestinian is the victim. So the order you get in this kind of situation is to le'avot chotzetz, to separate, or to try to separate between the Palestinians and the Israelis, and to be some kind of a block between them two. One kind of testimonies in this chapter describe that, and the other kind describe the active role that the Israeli settlers are taking when it comes to controlling of the Palestinians. For example, in each settlement, you have a security officer. It's a civilian working for the Ministry of Defense, gets his salary from the Ministry of Defense of Israel. This person is responsible for the security of the settlement. It means that he sits in briefings with the army, that he get information from the army. That when new soldiers arrive to a new place, he is briefing them, telling them the boundaries of the territory. For example, around every settlement, you have a special security zone where the Palestinians are not supposed to enter, because you want to protect the Israelis living there. Usually those special zones are Palestinian fields, otherwise the settlers would not be there, obviously. And there are many testimonies of how soldiers are called in the radio by those civilian officers that call them to remove the Palestinians that are coming to work on their field because it's too close to the settlement. And there's more and more about the involvement, but what this chapter is basically trying to show that you have two forces, two interests that are clashing here. And the settlers are obviously, even why was it so shocking for me? Because the settlers are the brothers, they are ours. This is our social group, it's not the Palestinians. So the security forces are challenged by the existence of the settlers. Many of the policemen, for example, who works in the territories are settlers themselves. And eventually, when you look at the wider picture of the existence of the settlement there and the settlers, you see how they actually help to control the Palestinians better for the army. And this without saying anything about how with every new settlement you have to have soldiers there, and this is what the army is doing, but this we do less in this book. So when we put all of this together and we put this picture that I was briefly describing, the book is mostly testimonies, but at the beginning we have the wider analysis, and we take in each chapter we give the analysis of every phrase, and we send you to read specific testimonies. So if you don't want to read the whole thing, then I can understand that. Read the introductions and read the testimonies that we give as evidence, as examples for what we're just saying. As I said at the beginning, the bottom line of that is that it does not matter who sits where and which initiative talks about a new negotiation that's running. The army acts in a very constant way in the last 13 years, in a way that makes the control much more professional, very, very efficient. Everything is a threat. Because when you ask the army what's a threat in 2013, it's not just the Palestinian with the weapon that's going to commit a terror attack. It's also the Palestinian with the sign or with the flag that is going to take part in a protest. When you ask Israel where is the borders of the Israeli control, it's not only in C areas. I don't know how many of you remember the division of A, B, and C as part of the Oslo Agreement, when A is under administrative and security control of the Palestinians, B is under the administrative control of Palestinians and security control of Israel, and C is the Palestinian area which is under the control and the responsibility, both security and civil, of Israel. But we have testimonies of soldiers telling us of entering A areas. One officer described that in 2008 as something that you do in order to see what changes in the ground, so the army will be aware of any kind of change. Others are just telling about entering even the Gaza Strip after the disengagement to arrest people regularly, weekly, entering there. So even the division of A, B, and C does not really exist in terms of the army. And the cooperation with the policemen, the Palestinian policemen and so on, all of that puts together one bottom line. The Israeli military is the one who controls. And the Palestinian society cannot protest at this point, not even without violence, because even this thing is considered to be a threat. And our reading of this reality, except for the part that it's not moral, that is put in danger any kind of chance for a real change and for a real peace process that will lead us both to live next to each other peacefully. Because when you don't let anything to really emerge, and on the contrary, you take every time that someone raises up his head up, you take him down. How can you later talk about two-state solution or one-state solution with equal rights and so on? And what we're trying to say basically is that there are many solutions that can be done eventually. And I'm sure that everyone here has some kind of thinking of, some kind of opinion about what should be the best solution. But Real Breaking the Silence says that you cannot really solve the problem without knowing it. And this is knowing it. So if you want to know more about the reality, and if you want to know the truth about the reality, and not what's been said only in those rooms, so we are here to tell you. And I recommend this book not just because it's ours, and it's a good one, because it's a really good document that we are very proud of, and we think it can contribute something in order to really change reality. And thank you for your attention and your That was a bit longer, but we have half an hour for questions and comments, so whoever wants. Yes.
You mentioned at the beginning
Speak loudly so people can
that you thought when you did this that it would have an immediate result. What has been the impact in terms of the Israeli
When we
people?
did this, we thought the world would change. When we did this, we were trained already to know that probably will not happen. In Israel, we sold less copies than any other country. It was published already in Germany and in Sweden and in Switzerland and here. In Israel, we did not manage to find any publisher to publish that, or any bookstore to put that in. It was just us selling that individually as privates. I was just telling in dinner before that we actually paid money to be part of a book fair. There's a book week every year in Israel, and so for a week we stood ourselves, our activists, in Tel Aviv, and we sold books. And the reactions of people, the encounter with us, is something that we're doing all the time. So we meet people. We do not need people just to know the wider picture. We're trying to make our own people to acknowledge the very, very basic thing, that the occupation exists, that there is an occupation. If you ask many Israelis, they will not even consider the situation as an occupation. They call it a constant war. So we invest lots of time in trying to educate and influence the debate by talking to young people at the age of 18 and students among our age, and like to try to encourage people to act in different way against and the media and politicians and everyone. And we still exist. So we did not, like at the beginning when you talk to these 60 guys, many of them are in different places in the world doing PhDs already, or having families and different other things. They did not think that this would be actually an organization. They thought they are coming, they have this exhibit, and that's it. They did not thought it will take so long to bring and that eventually we have so many people that testify on that. So we're trying to see the positive thing about that, and about the fact that we meet more people every year that actually are forced to deal with that. But it's very, very difficult inside of Israel. And it's extremely difficult when you have a leadership that does not really allow and does not really speak about that in the same terms. The foreign minister of Israel, the previous one, now we don't really have one, Victor Lieberman was considering us assistant to terror when he was talking to us. Assistant to terror. We are. So it did not create an impact. And I really think that in general, this book, unlike, it's not something that I don't take this book and this message that I was trying to give you very briefly today to 18 years old kids in Israel, or not even to students that encounter us for the first time. Because I think it's a bit more complex, and it's reading of reality that takes some kind of willingness to understand it, and also some kind of understanding that the situation is A and not B. And in Israel, we first showing the map to 18 years old kids. We're showing them where are the territories. We're talking to them about the occupation, is what's the difference between occupation and war. We even sometimes need to justify why is it right to speak about the army and to challenge what the army is doing, because none of that is obvious in Israel. So there we are a bit back. Yes.
My first question was going to be, how is it for you to live in Israel now? Where do you choose to live? and how to
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I usually don't answer that, but I will do that now. The last 6 months I don't live in Israel. I have a non-Israeli partner, and I chose to try my life in a different place. But I'm still doing what I'm doing, and I'm still fighting for that, because this is my home. And it hasn't been, like, to be the director of Breaking the Silence for 4 years. I talked with Elizabeth about it yesterday. It's raising a flag for 24 hours, 24/7. And we have a joke among ourselves in Breaking the Silence that when you join Breaking the Silence and an active member at the beginning, I don't know how many of you have been to Israel, but I drove here with some taxi driver and no one was talking to me. In Israel, when you go in with a taxi driver, they always talk to you and you have all the questions and so on. And they always reach a question of what are you doing? And at the beginning you answer them. And then at some point you reach a point, it does not take you so long. When you just said it, I'm a student. This is what I'm doing. So it's easier with taxi drivers, but it's more difficult with your family and your friends and the people around you. And I lost many friends in the last 4 years. It's also difficult sometimes to get back to Tel Aviv where I lived, or to different places, and to see people that don't know and don't care and just want to live their life, because at this point, Israelis and Palestinians do not meet, and you can live your life in Israel quite nicely without knowing Palestinians and without dealing with the occupation, especially the last 10 years when there are no bomb explosions in Tel Aviv, thanks God, and people are not dying so much in both sides, actually. So I, in person, chose to take out of it. Yes.
Thank you for answering that. I have a second question related to the government and any knowledge that you have or any of the members in your organization have about the Israeli government trying to silence you. What are your, what's...
I like what people think we managed to act, Like we managed to publish our materials individually. We managed to reach the media here and there, like not as much as we would like to, but we do manage to do that every once in a while. And we don't manage to do things like going into high school. We don't manage to speak in institutions. At this point in Israel, we're not even, used to be, the public discourse in the last year has changed so much that even in universities, you can only do, political organizations like us can only do independent activities, also not very often, and like also under restriction. You cannot come, for example, which was something that we were able to do a few years ago, into a course as part of the syllabus and speak about those topics. It does not exist anymore. So it's not just the government, it's also the public that choose the government. And the discourse has changed. I think that at this point, except for the fact that there was a phase in 2010 where they were trying to do many legislations that will come probably again on the table now about limiting the funding and cutting the funding. Most of the funding of Break Messiah and most organizations in the human rights field that dealing with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict are from outside of Israel. Either American money, but not so much of American money as European money, governmental European money. And there were different legislation that trying to stop those ones. It started after we published in 2009 a publication about the Gaza Operation Kaslet, which was all over the world, and first raised the question of the traitors and the flag of the traitors. So we were the first traitors, and then it started to involve other organizations as well. So it was a specific phase that it was a bit more endangered. But except for those legal steps that eventually did not take place in reality, they don't do much. But they call us assistant to terror, or the Prime Minister said, referring to our work, that there is no silence to break. And he sent us to collect testimonies from Hamas, because this is where we should point our energies towards, and all of these things. So when you have a leadership that does not call the occupation, and that talk about how we are hurting or the Israeli image in the world, and how we are risking in a way the security of Israel by talking about these things. So this is a much stronger tool than any other act that they might take. I don't think they're taking other ones, but I think again, some kind of a quiet phase at this point. I don't know for how long we will be.
You didn't really talk about this, but I was focusing on like the Israeli Arabs. So when people go over and serve in the occupation and they're dealing and treating them, the Palestinians, with this great scrutiny and making them feel uncomfortable, and how do they then come back and see the Israeli Arabs as equal partners in the future of an Israeli state? And what do the Israeli Arabs think of your organization?
It's a good question. We don't deal so much with that population. The Palestinian Israelis or Israeli Palestinian, depends who you ask and where, don't serve in the army, most of them. They don't serve in the army because the army does not want them. With me in Hebron, for example, I did have Arabs who served with me and choose to do that. They are a minority that are doing that. I wish that the Israeli-Palestinian or Palestinian-Israeli community would be more active against the occupation, but it's not the case. So they don't really deal with that much. I think for many reasons. When you talk, like there are organizations that are dealing with these topics, but there is equality that is even like when they need to deal with their civil life inside of Israel. There are so many issues that they have to improve in order to be as a regular citizen in Israel, as a Jewish citizen in Israel. So they did a lot with that, and not so much with the occupation. So I don't know if it answers you, but it's...
I'm just saying that some of the Israeli soldiers, Jewish soldiers, have never even been in a Palestinian home in Israel, the Israeli Arabs.
Yeah, I said at the beginning that I was never there before.
I understand.
Yeah. It's like that, unfortunately. Yes.
I have two questions. The first is along the same lines. Is there an organization for human rights, either among the Palestinian population in the occupied territories, or coming from any of the Arab states that surround Israel, that would want to be a partner organization with you because you're advocating human rights?
There are human rights organizations in the Palestinian society. I don't know to say in which status, because I think that, again, civil society among the Palestinians is in huge trouble now. It's not really functioning, it's not really developing, it's not really existing as it was a few years ago. And again, if we're talking about prevention and control, this is one of those results. We don't, we cooperate with individuals, Palestinian individuals in Hebron, in the South Hebron Hills, places where we take Israelis to show them the occupation, and then we try and also to create encounter and to let the Palestinians the local Palestinians to speak with Israelis and other groups as well, and to explain them and to describe reality from their perspective as well. But we don't cooperate, there is not a work that we're doing together with a Palestinian organization. It's just a choice that we made. We also do not cooperate with many other Israeli organizations on a regular basis. For Israeli organization, we have a very strong target audience. The first one is still the Israelis, and we believe that we do not need to tell the Palestinians what occupation is. So we're trying to stick to our very maybe small goal and small frame and to do that.
Okay, my follow-up question, you've been talking about your desire as an 18-year-old and in subsequent years to affect change. And you have an organization which is geared, I guess, towards change. What are the two main changes specifically that you would like to affect if you had the power to do it?
The first one is ending the occupation. This is what we're trying to do. We're trying to create awareness in a way that will influence people to think that the occupation is bad. Not just to think that, but actually to take a stand against it and to act against it. So this will be the first thing to do. If we achieve that, I give up the second one. So really, because I think that after that, so many other things will be possible. And without that, nothing will be possible.
Would the 800 settlers in the middle of Hebron be able to stay there?
That's a good question. There are, as I said at the beginning, there are different possibilities for solutions. I can tell you what's a problematic state of having settlers there. And when we talk about the book, or when we talk in general, we have lots of examples of why the presence of Israelis in the West Bank is problematic. But we don't talk about solutions because we are not politicians in that way, and there are enough people that can tell you what should be the solution. And I think that there are many options we can choose from. But there is one thing that I think that people are not talking about, even when they're talking about two-state solution and one-state solution, and that's ending the Israeli control, the military control over the Palestinians. And we're stopping there. I'm saying this, and again I'm saying it's a huge step to take, not just the Israeli society, but also the international community, because this is a topic that is not discussed on. And yes, when you do that, I guess that the status of settlers will also be different, because we see that obstacle for ending of the control and obstacle for real peace. But again, there are solutions that discuss about having some settlers, like some settlements are staying, and some will say exchange of land, some will say that as part of their vision they see Israeli settlers as citizens of the Palestinian land. Some talk about one-state solution when everyone is equal in general or not equal. Solution you have plenty, really.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go after.
There's lots of Palestinian peace groups. There's combatants for peace.
Yeah, of course.
There's the bereaved parents.
And there is
Sani
Combatants for
Awad's,
Peace, which is a not similar organization like us, but it's former soldiers and Palestinians are working together. Former combat Palestinians, they choose the nonviolent way and they talk together, and actually now in DC as well, they cooperate together and they're doing these kind of talks as well. And of course, the parent circle, parents from both sides that lost their children, and they speak together as well.
My question was, being raised Jewish, we read in the Torah all the time that Judea and Samaria was promised to the Jewish people by God. So they're not, or very Jewish people, very religious people would say they're not occupying the land. That is their land. So how do you you're saying the Torah is not right or is incorrect, and God is wrong when you say that that's not their land.
God, but I'm just, I can talk about reality as it is now. But there is a very clear legal phrase in order to define the situation in the West Bank or Judah, Samaria, whatever you want to call that. It's a military occupation, military control. This is what it is. And again, when you ask me about what to do with that later, there are different solutions that you can find, but the situation is that you don't have equal people that live with equal rights. I can start the whole thing again to try to prove you how much not. But this is the situation. So was it promised to us or was not promised to us, and what do you do with this kind of promise? It's bigger questions than me. But I just know what I'm resisting at this point. And I'm resisting this equality and the treating of other people not as human beings. As a human being, before I'm an Israeli, before I'm Jewish. I see the suffering of other human beings, and this is what I'm trying to resist. And this is what I'm trying everyone to resist as well. Because I think that it's much more, it's much more important than me as Jewish person, because the people that established breaking the silence, by the way, are religious. Some of them even stay religious until today, but they're religious. And they talk in their talks about the Jewish morality that is completely contradicting all of what we've talked about here now. And in different layers and levels of what they were raised and how they were taught. But for me, my encounter with this message of breaking the silence and this reality is because I was taught that people should treat people as human beings in the world. And this is, I think, something that is very Jewish. And promised land is there. It's part of the issue and the problem. But I don't think that the land is more holy than the life of other people. That's true. Yes.
I just wanted to add a piece of information. Sammy's a good friend, and he's been totally shut down. The soldiers come into his house regularly in the middle of the night, and he is not. His books are no longer being shown to anybody, and he has been totally shut down, and the parent circle as well.
Parent circle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, since the parent circle has been largely.
No, they do function, but I think they do function.
But they as a small group, but in terms of growing, no.
Yeah,
but Sammy's totally shut down. He's been totally silent.
Did you want to talk? You
Yeah,
were waiting
but
first. You go first.
So,
Yeah.
one is I just want to say in response to what you were saying, Stephen, also your response that folks in Rabbis for Human Rights, like Rabbi Arik Asherman, who would say there's more significance. There's more times in the Torah that is said that you should love your neighbor, live in peace with your neighbor, than it is about holding on to the land. So that they do human rights work and human rights education for people who are about to be soldiers, and that's one piece of the big puzzle. And then the two questions I had for you is, one, when you were talking about the mass arrest, I just think about a delegation that I helped recently leave in May and June, and how the massive arrests that we're seeing are also child arrests. So Palestinians who are 9 and 10 and 11 years old, and that thinking about how this is playing in, if you're seeing those testimonies come out of how, the more and more pressure that now it's taking, small kids and detaining them and not letting them come home.
So the last publication on breaking the silence that I was responsible for, and the last publication in general, was published in July last year. You can find it in our website as well. It's about the arrest and mistreatment of kids and teenagers, and how do you arrest and why do you arrest 9 years old kids? And I can say that the stories are, for me, it was one of the most difficult publications that we did.
And then, and the second question, and that was the first
And
time
then
I'd
just
ever
a-
heard so much.
One
Yeah.
more sentence about it, that when we talk about what's threat, so 9 years old with a stone, and sometimes with throwing stone to the or Molotov cocktail even to a border of the settlements, which is 400 meters away and you can never really reach, was a reason to kill a kid because he was threat. He is considered to be a threat. This is one of the testimonies from that booklet. So when you finish to read the book, read the testimonies about the kids, and both don't read before you go to sleep.
And the second thing I wanted to ask, and it's about, what is it that people do and how to create the change, especially around the awareness about the occupation, but then more and more, obviously Palestinian civil society is for boycott, divestment, and sanctions, but and that's illegal to engage that in Israel at all, but I'm wondering if those are conversations that you'll have and what meaning it has, and if that's a struggle that you have considering what
And
the
in
Jewish
Israel, there is
community
a
deals
law
with.
that was one of the in the legislation part. This was, I think, the only law that passed that you cannot support boycotts, not as an organization, and you cannot support as an individual.
Even though there are people that do, but
Yeah,
yes.
but it's illegal in Israel to support boycott in Israel. When you ask if we talk about it as breaking the silence, people. In Breaking the Silence, among 950 people that are part and members, many people chose not to be active in any way, and the people that are active chose different ways. Some of them are going and taking part in different BDS movements. Some of them are going and helping Palestinians. Their activism is going with Rabbis for Human Rights or Ta'ayush to the field with Palestinians on the weekends to help them and to protect them from settlers that are coming, settlers or the police or the soldiers that are coming to take them off their field. Some people chose to be doing other works, cooperating with Palestinians. Some of them chose to be part of Breaking the Silence and do what I'm doing. We do not agree about what should you do, like we don't agree about the solution as well. Among us, put so many Israelis and Jewish people together, you would have so many opinions, so we do not agree about that. But we do have one common ground, and this is why we sticking to this one, is that the occupation is immoral, that we should resist that, and we should encourage people to take a stand against that. And then you can choose whatever you want, what's to take a stand, but this is what we're trying to encourage.
It seemed like when you started your talk, you kind of set aside the premise, you were not challenging the premise that all these tactics, however immoral, are contributing to Israel's security. And it seems like if you don't challenge that, then it makes it much harder for people in Israel to listen to. I mean, if you could also make the case that these tactics are not making Israel more secure, then you would have a more.
So we do discuss it in the book.
Yeah.
We also discussed it in the book, and we also try, like in Israel, it's a bit more difficult because again, the security issue and the justification of security lies in many places that, and I guess that here it will be more difficult to accept. But we said, and we talk about it in the book, and we also said this does not contribute to Israel's security mainly because no people agreed to be suppressed forever, and it will not work forever. It will have to end at some point. So now the Israeli control is very, very strong, and it's been working actually. If you're looking at the last 10 years, it's been working quite well. That's why we are so afraid of, because this preserving of the situation is working so well that it's not broken. Why fix it? There is no political will to change the situation exactly because of that, because it is working. For the long run, we are saying it's not going to work because it cannot last forever. But again, in Israel, the security issue is so strong that there are so many, many of the things that we talk about here, many Israelis in the feeling on the back of their head, they're feeling that they are in a constant war. They will say that they are willing to accept or they're willing to have and to pay this price because it's either there or their existence.
So, what sort of reception have you had here? What kind of reception have you had in your speaking?
Here?
Not just in Atlanta, but in this country.
It's just my second day here.
Great so far.
It's great so far. I've been doing an American speaking tour in 2010, and it was in some places very receptive and very supportive, and in other places was difficult, as is difficult in Israel. In Europe as well. And everyone has mixed opinions, and like we hear different voices in different places, but we have lots of people that support us, and lots of people, maybe depends where, more people that are finding it very difficult to accept. Yes.
Yeah, I have two questions. One's a little bit more tangential than the other. The first one is, in any occupation, the people are oppressed, but the women tend to be more oppressed. And is there sexual intimidation of the women as well by the Israelis?
Not that we see.
Not that you see, and not that's reported, or is it so subtle and pervasive that it just kind of?
No, I think it's intimidating for both genders. I can assume, as a woman, I can assume that having men coming in and taking my
Right, there's a whole other.
There are these kind of aspects, but not that I can.
Not that you're aware. Okay, the more tangential question has to do, again, with the divide between the Haredi and the religious Jews and the secular Jews, and the growing polarization between them in Israeli society, not just women at the wall, but just in general, the pushback from the seculars against the religious, and the religious getting more and more political, outrageous control over people's lives, and how that does hook into this concept of Judea and Samaria as, somehow predestined, and reinforcing this right-wing, contingent. And if you, as an Israeli, can worry about a civil war within Israel between the secular and the non-seculars.
That's way out of.
But it is related to the political situation with the occupation.
I can say there are tendencies, and the civil discourse in Israel is changing, and the last two governments who are elected can show that as well. I'm not so much afraid about civil war. I'm more afraid of the current situation, and you do see not just the presence of settlers in key roles in the army as in commanders, and you can imagine how it is, and we hear many times of when there is a question of evacuating settlements and so on, that there are more and more religious soldiers that are refusing, and how does it impact. It raises many questions, and it's a very difficult topic in Israel, and like it's a very important issue to deal with. But as many other issues, I think that it can explode in one moment, and it can explode after the situation with Palestinians will be better. You cannot really know, but you definitely feel something like that. When we dealt with the Gaza operation, we were dealing, one of the things that we recognized as problematic was the role that the military rabbinate took in preparing and briefing soldiers and talking about in the war about the sons of evil against the sons of light, and all of these things. And so you do see that more and more. But I have to admit that except for the Gaza operation, we as Breaking Sound did not deal with that so much. But we can notice, and you do hear also, and you can read in testimonies also about the presence of higher and higher commanders that are settlers, and how does it influence the dynamic within the army.
So when we talk about settlers, and I think there's a piece there's a way of thinking about that I'm hearing a little bit about. I'm hearing here, that specifically, settlers are people that are, want to get Samara and Judea back, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But in what way would you see the settlements, as illegal as they are, and supported both by the military and the police, as a very specific tool of the occupation? I mean, besides that they're seizing land, et cetera, You understand what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
I'm not sure. It's not their,
I mean, I think we're talking
their
about-
ideological settlements. They are there for ideology because they call the West Bank, not so many people call the West Bank in Israel the West Bank. Most people call it Judea and Samaria.
So you don't see that as a tool of the occupation?
No, we
It's-
definitely do see that
Okay.
as a tool, and we see it as one arm of the control of Palestinians. In the same way, by the way, we see, we think that when we look at the reading of reality, we see that even one soldier that abused Palestinian in the checkpoint, even if he did not get a direct order to do that, it contributed to the big picture of controlling. So the settlements and settlers are definitely, the settler violence and everything that has to do with that, around that, definitely contribute to maintenance of the occupation for sure. But it's of course not only why they're going there, or why they live there, or why the Israeli support them, or why many Americans support the settlers.
Right.
It's important to say. The support of the settlement does not come only from Israel, it comes a lot from the US as well.
Yes, it does.
Couldn't do it without us.
Right.
Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Just one more sentence. Please get in more information and inform yourself more, because we really, really believe that you cannot hold any kind of opinion here or there without knowing the facts. So buy the book and go into our website, and if it's easier for you to see testimonies, men testimonies, women, female testimonies, read about children getting arrested, come to the West Bank and visit a Hebron with us and sit in front of you and do something to help us to help ending the occupation. And really, really thank you for your questions and your attention.
I want to say that a little more strongly. It's standard at a book signing to sit behind it. It's standard at a book signing to ask you to buy the book, and at a minimum, you should certainly buy the book. And if we run out of books, you should leave a $20 check for breaking the silence. But beyond that, I think there's something even more important. All of you are potential ambassadors. All of us need to know more in order to talk to other people. So in addition to buying the book, I want you to actually read the book. And then I want you to find 10 people to talk to about what you learned. Think about coming to the book club so that we can teach each other and learn more about it. Anything you want to add about it?
Yeah, I just want to say if anybody hasn't signed this list, that you have an opportunity, it'll be up here. And another thing is if you want to go on a delegation, I'm happy to tell you about, there's some flyers on the front. We meet with Breaking Silences. The organization Interfaith Peacebuilders meets with Breaking Silences and a lot of the other organizations and spend time at Hebron. There's a few people who've been on those delegations here, and it's really worthwhile to get eyewitness accounts and then have the opportunity to support ending the occupation.
Raise your hand so people can find you and talk to you if you've been on a delegation. So if you want to know more, talk to one of these people.
Okay. Thank you,
And
Donna.
thank you all for
Thank
coming.
you.